I remember the night like it was a fragile memory slipping through my fingers. The old bridge loomed ahead, fog curling around the weather beams like smoke from a dying fire. The river beneath whispered softly, carrying secrets no one had dared speak aloud. My boots clicked against the damp wood, echoing in the stillness, and every breath I took seemed to hang in the air, heavy and visible. Somewhere downstream, a pale light flickered, then vanished. I paused, feeling the water's chill creep into my bones. The silence pressed against me, broken only by the soft, rhythmic lapping of the current. And then I saw it. A shadow gliding just beneath the bridge, impossible to touch, impossible to ignore. My heart slowed, a cold knot tightening, and I knew this place held more than moss and mist. Something watched me patiently, as if waiting for me to step too close. That's when I saw it, fleeting and pale, and realized I might never leave the bridge unchanged. The bridge waited. Fog clung to the old planks, thick and damp, curling around the railings like slow smoke. I stepped forward. The wood sighed beneath my weight. A pale light from the fading sun slipped between the trees. Thin and trembling, I could feel it on my skin, cool, soft, almost wet. Shadows moved at the edge of my vision. Not clearly, just a flicker, a hesitation. I paused. The air smelled of moss and old rain. A hollow hum lingered, somewhere beneath the bridge, or maybe inside me. I wanted to turn back, but the path was quiet. Too quiet. A plank creaked, then another. I was alone, but the silence pressed in heavy as fog. I imagined voices, whispering just out of reach. Nothing spoke, yet I felt watched, as if the darkness leaned closer, waiting for me to breathe wrong. The rail beneath my hand was cold, rough with age, splinters biting my fingers. I moved slowly, footsteps swallowed by the mist. Shadows stretched long, twisting into shapes I didn't want to name. A soft rustling came from the side. Branches? Or something that shouldn't be here. I held my breath. The wind shifted. It carried the faint smell of earth, wet leaves, decay, and something else, faint, metallic, impossible to place. My eyes tried to follow the movement. Corners of the bridge darkened, then brightened, then dark again. I could swear the fog itself was alive, curling around me with intent. I stopped mid-step. The hum deepened, almost a pulse beneath my feet. The wood beneath my boots felt unstable. I pressed my palms against the railing. Cold, solid, but not comforting. A shadow darted beneath me. Or maybe it rose, reaching, curling like smoke into the fading light. I could not look directly. I could not turn away. The bridge seemed longer now, endless in the fog. Each plank a small risk, each step echoing in the silence. I felt the weight of watching eyes, or perhaps only imagination, whispering what I feared most. I could not tell, and the not knowing was worse. I exhaled slowly. The mist clung to my hair, my neck, my clothes. I felt it seep into my chest. Cold and wet, a figure, or maybe a shadow, moved at the far end. I could not see details, only the sway, the pause, the faintest flicker of movement. The bridge groaned under the wind. I held the railing tighter, feeling the rough splinters bite, and thought about turning back. But something held me. Curiosity, fear, or the quiet insistence of the fog itself. I kept walking, step by careful step. The world beyond the bridge disappeared. Only fog and silence remained. At the middle, I paused again, saw footsteps or memories of them, echoed from the planks behind me. I was certain of nothing. The sun slipped entirely behind the horizon. Shadows pooled, deep and endless. The hum beneath me faded, leaving only the creak of wood and the rasp of fog against the rails. I reached the far side. The mist clung a little longer, reluctant to let me go. I stepped off the bridge, onto solid ground, and the world seemed quieter, smaller, still somehow watching. I turned back once. The bridge was empty. Or maybe it wasn't. The fog lingered, curling, twisting, patient. And I knew I had not truly crossed alone. The river stretched ahead, slow and dark. Mist hovered low, curling over the surface like smoke from a distant fire. Evening had settled, soft and heavy, and the water gleamed faintly under the fading light. I knelt at the edge, fingertips brushing the cold current. It shivered against my skin, slick and restless. The scent of wet stones and moss drifted up, earthy and deep. The water murmured, not plainly, not words I could understand, just a soft, restless hum, like voices carried from far away, over years, over silence. I tilted my head, listening. The hum seemed to ebb and shift, curling around the rocks, curling around me. My own breath sounded loud, too loud in the quiet air. Ripples glinted under the last traces of sun. Each one shimmered, pale and fleeting, like an echo of light. I thought I saw shapes beneath the surface, small shadows dancing, or reflections of branches above, swaying. I couldn't tell, and the not knowing drew me closer. The river smelled of rain long gone, of something old, iron into the soil, wet and lingering. The hum changed then, rising subtly, as if aware of me, aware I had stopped. A leaf drifted past. Carried by the current, it spun slowly, catching the light, trembling in a rhythm I couldn't name. And with it, the whispers seemed to pulse, soft, urgent, barely there. I leaned closer, letting my hands hover just above the water. Cool mist touched my cheeks, smelling faintly of earth and decay. Every instinct told me to step back, but curiosity pressed me forward. The shadows beneath rippled again. A flicker of movement, a pause, a hesitation. Something watched, or something remembered. I felt the river brush against my ankles, smooth, relentless, carrying secrets I could almost grasp but not hold. A small bubble surfaced, breaking the hum with a gentle pop. The sound lingered longer than it should have, and then another and another, each one a soft punctuation in the ongoing whisper, echoing against the riverbank. I closed my eyes. The hum wrapped around my chest, tight, familiar, and strange all at once. It felt alive, patient, waiting for something I couldn't name. A branch scraped along the surface, distant, yet deliberate. My skin prickled, hair rising where the mist clung. I could feel the pull of the current, gentle but insistent, as if the water wanted me to follow. I stepped closer. The river licked at my boots, cold, unyielding. A shadow passed beneath, slower this time, deliberate, watching. The hum softened, retreating under the whisper of the flowing water. It left behind only silence, layered heavy, like breath held too long. And in that silence, I felt the weight of all the voices the river had carried, pressing against the edges of my mind. I drew back slightly, letting the water recede from my fingers. The last of the pale light shivered across the surface, faint and trembling, and I knew, even as I stepped onto the bank, that the river had not finished speaking. It would wait, always wait, and I would hear it again. The bridge loomed overhead, dark against the dim evening sky. The air was damp, carrying the smell of wet wood and river mud. Fog clung low, curling around the beams like fingers that I stepped closer to the edge. The planks beneath my boots were slick, cold, whispering under each careful footfall. Water pressed against the supports, rising and falling in soft pulses. Something moved beneath the bridge. A flicker, pale and hesitant, like moonlight caught in a ripple. I froze. The shape was faint, almost nothing, yet it lingered. A shadow with the wrong color. Soft, white, drifting against the darkness. I blinked, and it seemed to pull away, keeping just beyond reach. I leaned forward, breath shallow, eyes straining. The fog smelled damp and earthy, clinging to my hair and clothes. The river hummed, carrying whispers I couldn't place. Faint and distant, the pale figure shifted again. Not fully human, not fully shadow, just an impression, a hesitation in the air. I thought I saw it glance upward, at me, though it had no face. I stepped closer, careful, slow. The fog wrapped around my ankles, cold and wet. My fingers brushed the railing, rough and splintered, grounding me. It vanished. A pause in the world, and the river's hum seemed louder, sharper, echoing beneath the bridge. I held my breath, waiting. A leaf drifted past, curling in the current. The movement seemed deliberate, a marker where the figure had been. But nothing else remained. I peered under the bridge, straining through mist and shadow. The water shimmered faintly, catching the last light of dusk. And for a heartbeat, I thought I saw it again, just there, lingering in the pale shimmer. I shivered. The air pressed close, thick with the smell of wet stone and moss. The hum beneath me was steady now, patient, unyielding. I reached forward instinctively, fingers brushing the fog itself, cold, uncertain, and the figure was gone once more, leaving only emptiness in its wake. Saw footsteps, or maybe echoes of them, followed my own along the planks. I could feel eyes, or a memory of eyes, watching, waiting, just beyond perception. Every instinct warned me to turn back, but I stayed. The fog shifted again, curling low and thick. The bridge creaked gently beneath my weight. The river murmured beneath, carrying the faintest hint of a sigh. Almost human, almost forgotten. I stepped back, letting the edge of the bridge pass beneath my feet. The figure did not return, but its absence pressed against the air, heavy and deliberate. I exhaled slowly. The mist lingered, brushing my cheeks, damp and insistent. I knew the pale shape had not left. It had only withdrawn, patient, waiting for me to notice. And as I walked away, the bridge faded behind me. The river shimmered softly beneath, and I could feel it, somewhere in the fog, following, not quite seen, not quite gone. The fog had thickened, settling over the river like a pale, slow blanket. I could barely see the railings of the bridge or the water beneath, just gray shapes floating in the mist. The air was cold and damp. Clinging to my clothes, brushing my cheeks with every hesitant step, I paused. A soft echo reached me from somewhere along the riverbank. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, and impossibly distant. I listened harder. The mist swallowed them, and then they came again, closer now, yet still unreal. No one was there. I was alone, but the sound pressed against my ears, patient, insistent. The river murmured beneath the fog, carrying hints of old rain and wet earth. Every ripple shimmered in pale light, stretching and breaking across the dark water. And with it, the footsteps echoed again, soft, hollow, fading just as I thought I could follow. I tried to move toward the sound. The fog wrapped around my ankles, cool and persistent. The air smelled faintly of decay and damp leaves, pressing in, thick as wool. The bridge groaned beneath my weight. I froze, listening. Another echo answered me, or maybe it had been there all along. Shadows flickered in the fog, thin and hesitant, curling around shapes I could not name. My skin prickled where the mist brushed my neck. The air felt alive, waiting, and I felt a soft tug of awareness, like I had stepped into the river's memory. I leaned over the railing. The water shimmered, gray and restless, carrying ripples that trembled toward the fog. The footsteps echoed again, nearer this time, but still no one appeared. I stepped back. The wood beneath my boots was slick with moisture, creaking softly. The fog shifted, curling, thickening, swallowing the far end of the bridge entirely. I could hear the hum of the river now, steady and deep beneath the echoes. It was joined by the faintest whisper of movement in the mist, branches brushing against each other, or something else, something deliberate. I swallowed, letting the cold press into my chest. Footsteps repeated, slower now, as if following a rhythm I could not grasp. Every instinct screamed to turn and leave. Yet my body stayed, drawn forward by the mystery pressing in. A shadow drifted through the fog, pale and uncertain. It did not move like a person, nor like a shape of nature. It paused, lingered, then dissolved into gray nothing. The echoes softened. The footsteps slowed, then disappeared entirely. The river hummed alone beneath the fog, carrying whispers I could not understand. I took a careful step forward. The mist clung, damp and cool, brushing my arms, seeping into my clothes. I felt the weight of being watched, though I could see nothing, nothing at all. I exhaled slowly. The fog shifted around me, curling back toward the river, patient, infinite. And I knew, even as the echoes faded, that the river and the mist remembered every step I had taken. I walked on, the bridge beneath me quiet. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and old wood. And somewhere deep in the fog, the echoes waited, soft, patient, and never truly gone. The night was heavy, thick with mist. The river stretched ahead, dark and endless, swallowing the last traces of light. Cold air brushed my cheeks, damp and soft, carrying the scent of wet leaves and old earth. Something glimmered ahead, a pale flicker, wavering against the gray water. I squinted through the fog, unsure if it was light or reflection. The lantern floated downstream. No one held it. No hand guided it. It drifted slowly, swaying like it breathed, casting strange, dancing reflections across the fog. I stepped closer to the riverbank. The mist curled around my ankles, wet and insistent. Every ripple in the water shimmered, catching the lantern's glow in fractured, trembling patterns. The light danced across branches, over rocks, and onto the bridge where I stood. Shadows stretched long and thin, curling and twisting, alive in the trembling glow. I could feel my breath, shallow and warm, mingling with the cold mist. I followed it with my eyes, step by careful step. The lantern seemed deliberate, moving against the current in slight, irregular pulses. A soft hum seemed to ride the air, or perhaps it was the river itself. Echoing beneath the flickering light, my fingertips brushed the railings. Cold, damp, rough with age. I felt the lantern's glow on my skin, pale and ghostly, like it remembered warmth it no longer had. The fog thickened around it, curling into spirals, twisting the light into strange shapes. I thought I saw faces in the reflections, half-formed, pale, impossible to focus on. And for a heartbeat, I could have sworn the lantern paused, as if watching me. I leaned closer. The river licked at my boots, dark and restless. The hum deepened, joining the flicker of light, echoing in time with my pulse. I blinked. It drifted further, slow, deliberate, and vanished behind a curtain of mist. The glow lingered for a moment on the water, fading, soft, leaving only shadows behind. A faint ripple moved toward me. The lantern's path seemed deliberate, like a memory carried by the current. I could smell damp wood and iron from the riverbed, and something faintly sweet, impossible to place. I exhaled, cold and quiet. The fog shifted, swallowing the water and the light entirely. I could hear only the river now, murmuring, patient, unending. And though the lantern was gone, I knew it had not left entirely. Somewhere beneath the mist, it floated still, waiting, flickering, carrying a quiet invitation I could neither resist nor name. I stepped back from the edge. The reflections faded, leaving only the soft gray of fog and the hum of water beneath. And as I walked away, I felt the lantern watching, patient, silent, and strangely alive. The air hung heavy over the bridge. Mist curled low, thick and damp, brushing my hair and clothes. The river below moved silently, dark and unyielding, swallowing the fading light. I noticed at first as a faint vibration. A bell high above, suspended on an old rope. The wood had hung from creaked faintly, yet the rope did not sway. The bell rang again, soft, hollow, like a breath caught in the throat of the fog. I stepped closer, the air smelling faintly of rust and wet earth, metallic and sharp. My fingers traced the railing, cold and rough, slick with mist. Each echo of the bell seemed to linger longer than it should, stretching across the river, across the fog, into the night. I tilted my head. No wind moved the rope. No one approached, yet the bell kept its slow, deliberate tolling. Shadows shifted around me, curling in the fog, dark and quiet. The air pressed close, heavy with something unspoken. I could feel it in my chest, a subtle pressure, a pulse like someone or something watching. I leaned over the edge. The water glimmered faintly under the fog, catching fragments of the bell's pale light. Ripples spread like fingers, touching rocks and branches, spreading into gray nothingness. I held my breath. The bell rang again, softer this time, yet impossibly near. My skin prickled with a mist pressed, cold and wet, brushing over my neck. A sudden stillness fell. The hum of the river grew louder, as though amplifying the bell's absence. Shadows pooled beneath the bridge, solid and thick, curling with the fog. I took a step back. The bell's tone lingered faintly, almost whispered, echoing in the damp air. It carried a weight, old and patient, pressing into the edges of thought. I swallowed. The fog clung, curling around my boots, slick and insistent. I could hear nothing but the faint hum of water and the memory of the bell's toll. I reached toward the railing, grounding myself. The rope did not move. The bell did not pause. It seemed alive, patient, deliberate. The sound faded slowly, leaving only the mist and the heavy, wet air. The bridge groaned softly beneath me, each step a small punctuation in the silence. And I knew the bell had not stopped ringing entirely. Somewhere, deep in the fog, it waited, waiting for another moment, another hand, another breath, and I walked away, feeling its weight linger, pressing to the fog long after I left. The river stretched in darkness, its surface slick and restless. Mist curled low over the water, damp and cold against my skin. The air smelled faintly of wet wood and iron, carried in soft, heavy breaths. I noticed the ripples first, small, hesitant, spreading across the river like careful fingers. At first, I thought it was wind or fish, but they moved too deliberately. The shapes formed beneath the water, fleeting and pale. Contours that could have been arms, a head, a shadow. Each one vanished the moment I tried to focus. I leaned closer, fingertips brushing the railing. Rough wood, slick with mist. The air pressed against me, heavy, almost alive. Ripples pulsed again, faster this time, curling into patterns I could not name. The water shivered, carrying reflections of the fog, pale and trembling. A faint hum seemed to rise from the river itself, low and patient. I held my breath. The shape seemed aware, moving just beyond perception. Every instinct screamed to step back. Yet I could not. A shadow flickered along the edge of the water. Or maybe it was part of the ripple, dissolving as soon as I blinked. The river's hum deepened, pressing into the silence of the fog. I could feel the cold seep to my boots, up my legs, creeping like the water itself. The mist swirled around my neck, damp and insistent. I traced the ripples with my eyes, every wave forming something impossible, then nothing. A sudden shiver ran down my spine. The water pulsed again, deliberate, slower now, as if drawing a pattern only I could not comprehend. The shapes lingered at the edge of perception, teasing me, vanishing when I tried to grasp them. The fog thickened, curling around the riverbank, swallowing details. Even the bridge beneath me felt uncertain, groaning softly with my weight. And still the ripples moved, patient, deliberate, alive. I stepped back instinctively. The cold air pressed against my chest, damp and heavy. The river shimmered faintly in the last traces of light, carrying shapes I could not hold. I exhaled slowly. The hum softened, leaving only the gentle pulse of water against wood. But I knew the shapes had not disappeared. They waited beneath the surface, patient, silent, watching. I walked away from the edge, the fog curling after me. The river's surface shivered once more, pale and quiet, and I could feel it following just beneath, alive in the shadows, waiting for the next glance. The bridge stretched ahead, gray and silent beneath the heavy fog. Each plank felt damp beneath my boots, slick with mist and age. The air was cold, carrying the faint scent of river mud and wet wood. I stopped. Soft footsteps echoed behind me, careful and deliberate. The bridge was empty. I could see nothing but fog curling over the railings. I held my breath. The steps repeated, following, yet not close enough to see. Every instinct told me to turn, but I stayed, rooted by the sound. The fog pressed in, curling around my ankles, damp and thick. Shadows twisted in the corners of my vision, long and thin. The river hummed beneath, low and patient, carrying the chill in its pulse. I took a slow step forward. The echo followed, then another, still following, soft, measured, insistent. The railing was cold beneath my fingers, rough and slick. The air smelled faintly of moss and iron. I could feel the fog brushing my neck, crawling across my shoulders, insistent. I paused again. The footsteps stopped too. The silence pressed in, heavy, almost breathing with me. Then they came once more, slow, deliberate, perfectly timed with my own. I looked over my shoulder. Nothing, only fog and a faint shimmer of river water beneath. A shiver ran down my spine. The planks groaned beneath my weight. I could feel the rhythm of the footsteps in my chest, as though the bridge itself remembered them. I pressed forward, careful, slow. The fog clung, curling around my boots, damp and insistent. Every step echoed softly, then was joined by another, impossibly quiet, always behind me. I exhaled slowly. The mist swirled in gentle spirals around me, brushing my face. The footsteps faded gradually, leaving only the hum of the river and the creak of old wood beneath my feet. I walked on, careful, deliberate. The bridge stretched, empty and silent, yet I could still feel them, soft, patient, watching from just beyond the fog. And though I could see nothing, I knew I had never truly walked alone. The bridge was swallowed in fog, thicker now than before. The air was cold and damp, clinging to my skin, seeping into my clothes. Every breath tasted faintly of wet earth and river mud, heavy and still. I stepped forward, careful, slow. The planks beneath my boots were slick, each creak echoing into the gray void. Then the fog shifted, swirling around me like a slow, living thing. Eyes appeared, fleeting, pale, just at the edge of perception. They shimmered in the mist, watching, vanishing the moment I tried to focus. The air pressed close, heavy and humid. I could feel the mist brushing my neck, wet and insistent, curling over my shoulders. The river murmured beneath the bridge, carrying faint echoes of something I could not name. I froze. The eyes moved with the swirl, always just out of reach. My skin prickled, hair rising where the fog brushed my face. I stepped forward, unsure, drawn by a mixture of fear and curiosity. The mist twisted around my boots, cold and unyielding, curling up the bridge like smoke. Every ripple in the fog carried a hint of motion, a presence, too fleeting to hold. A shadow passed behind me, or maybe in front. I could not tell. The eyes blinked, vanished, and reappeared, pale and patient, observing from the gray. I felt their gaze like a weight pressing against my chest. I drew my hands across the railing, rough, damp, grounding me. The fog twisted, curling between my fingers, almost alive, almost aware. I tried to step backward. The mist followed, swirling, stretching, containing me. Every instinct told me to run, but my feet were slow, heavy, tethered to the bridge. The river hummed beneath, low and insistent. The eyes lingered, vanishing and returning in endless, impossible rhythm. I could feel them in my bones, in the fog pressing close, in the cold air that wrapped around me. I exhaled slowly. The swirl of mist softened, the eyes retreating, fading into the gray. Yet the weight remained, the memory of their gaze, patient, watching. I stepped forward again. The bridge seemed longer now, fog curling endlessly on either side. And I knew, even as the eyes disappeared, that they would return, silent, patient, waiting for the next glance. The bridge sagged under the weight of night. Fog curled low over the river, thick and damp, brushing my face with each hesitant step. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and decay, heavy and slow. I stopped listening. Soft murmurs drifted upward from the water below. Not words I could understand, but names, stories, faint and fractured, brushing the edge of memory. The river rippled, carrying the voices along with it. Cold mist pressed against my neck and wrists, curling around my clothes. Every echo seemed deliberate, patient, a language I could almost grasp but never fully hold. I leaned over the railing. The wood was slick, rough beneath my fingertips. The hum of water and the whispers blended, low and constant, pressing close to my chest. A name floated upward, gentle, impossible to place. It brushed my ears, brushing the hair on my arms, lingering in the damp air. I shivered, caught between fear and curiosity, unable to step back entirely. The fog thickened around the riverbank, swallowing shapes, swallowing light. The murmurs repeated, faint, soft, as if the water remembered voices long forgotten. Ripples carried reflections, pale and trembling, dancing in time with the unseen currents. I pressed my hands against the railing, grounding myself. The air was thick, humid, smelling of wetwood and old river stones. The whispers grew a fraction louder, soft syllables curling into my mind. I exhaled slowly. The river hummed beneath, steady and endless, as if it held every forgotten voice in its depths. I could feel the weight of history pressing in, patient, unyielding. A shadow passed beneath the surface, fleeting, half-formed, vanishing before I could focus. The voices lingered, soft and deliberate, carrying stories I could not touch. I could hear my own heartbeat in the rhythm of the water, small, fragile, and human. I stepped back on the railing, letting the fog curl between my fingers. The murmurs receded slightly, leaving only the hum of the river and the wet weight of night. And I knew, even as I walked away, the voices would remain soft, patient, waiting beneath the surface. The bridge stretched behind me, empty and silent. Yet somewhere below, the whispers carried on, infinite, untouchable, and alive. I kept walking, the mist brushing my skin, and the names followed, soft as breath, soft as memory. The fog pressed close, curling along the bridge and spilling over the river. Cold air brushed my cheeks, damp and heavy. The scent of wet wood and iron lingered, mingling with the faint hum of the river. I looked down. The water shimmered, restless, pale beneath the fog. Ripples fractured the surface, catching fragments of the night. Then I saw it, a face reflected back at me. Not mine, twisted, pale, almost translucent, staring with empty, patient eyes. I froze. The air pressed against my skin, cold and damp, curling around my shoulders. The river hummed beneath, low and steady, as if aware of the reflection it carried. I leaned closer, my breath fogging in the chill air. The face mirrored my movements, yet warped, elongated, a subtle distortion that made my skin crawl. I reached a trembling hand toward the water, fingertips brushing the mist above the surface. It shivered, the reflection rippling, and with it, the face smiled faintly, a movement that was mine, yet impossibly wrong. The fog seemed to thicken around the water, curling into soft spirals, brushing my hands and boots. I stepped back, the bridge groaning beneath my weight. The reflection stayed, patient, unblinking, its eyes holding mine. Every instinct told me to turn, yet my gaze lingered, drawn by something unnameable. The air smelled faintly of decay, iron, and wet moss. The river carried the hum of night, steady, infinite. The twisted face remained, shimmering beneath the fog, almost alive in the pale light. I took another step back. Ripples spread across the water, distorting the reflection, but never erasing it. The chill pressed deeper into my chest, cold and slow, seeping into my bones. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my pulse. The fog curled between my fingers, brushing my face and shoulders. The reflection remained, patient, waiting, impossible to ignore. I finally turned away. The bridge stretched empty behind me, fog swallowing the edges of vision. Yet the face lingered in my mind, twisted and pale, patient and alive, shimmering with the weight of something long forgotten. The fog was thick, curling over the bridge like smoke. Cold air pressed against my skin, damp and sharp, carrying the scent of wet wood and river mud. Every step I took echoed softly, swallowed quickly by the gray. I stopped. The bridge felt empty, silent, unmoving. Yet something brushed my shoulder, cold, fleeting, impossible. I froze. The air pressed closer, heavier, as if leaning into the touch. My heartbeat quickened, small and fragile against the hush of night. The planks beneath my boots creaked softly, damp and slick. I turned slowly, careful, expecting nothing. Only fog, only shadows curling between the railings. The cold lingered for a heartbeat longer than it should. It pressed along my neck, brushing the hair on my arms, chilling and patient. A shiver ran down my spine, slow and deliberate, as if the fog itself had hands. I stepped forward cautiously. The mist clung to my boots, wet and insistent. Every movement carried a faint echo, another brush against my skin that may have been imagined or not. The river hummed beneath, steady, low, endless. The air smelled faintly of iron and wet moss. I could feel the fog curling over my shoulders, wrapping tight, searching. I exhaled slowly. The chill faded slightly, but the weight of it lingered, pressing through the fog, unseen. The bridge groaned softly beneath my feet, creaking in rhythm with my pulse. I pressed my hands along the railing, grounding myself. The fog twisted between my fingers, damp and cold, brushing my face. I could sense the presence, patient, silent, lingering just beyond perception. I moved forward, slow, careful. The touch did not return, yet the memory of it pressed against my skin. Every step felt measured, watched, the bridge longer, emptier, and more silent than before. And though I walked on, I knew the cold hand waited somewhere, patient unseen, brushing the edge of the fog, as the river hummed quietly beneath. The fog lay thick over the bridge, curling in low, restless spirals. The air was cold, damp, carrying the scent of wet wood and river stone. Each step I took pressed softly into the mist, swallowed quickly by the gray. I stopped. Shadows moved along the planks, flitting, shifting in ways the pale light could not explain. They were not cast by anything I could see, just shapes dancing along the bridge's wet surface. I leaned closer to the railing, fingertips brushing cold, slick wood. The shadows shifted as if aware, twisting, elongating, retreating whenever I tried to focus. The river hummed beneath, low and patient, carrying a chill into my bones. A shiver ran along my spine. The air pressed against my neck, damp and insistent. Every movement of the shadows felt deliberate, teasing, alive. I stepped forward slowly. They danced ahead, around my feet, stretching and bending like smoke, never touching, never still. The fog curled around my boots, damp, insistent, thickening with every hesitant step. I exhaled slowly. The shadows flickered again, sharper, thinner, darting across the planks as though avoiding something unseen. I could feel the weight of their presence, patient, unyielding, just beyond comprehension. The bridge groaned softly beneath my boots, every creak echoing into the still night. I could smell damp moss, iron, and the faint tang of river water in the air. The shadows twisted again, flitting at impossible angles, moving faster than reason allowed. I froze. The mist pressed close, curling over my shoulders, brushing my face with wet fingers. The shadows lingered at the edges of my vision, flickering like silent warnings. I moved forward carefully, slow and deliberate. Each plank seemed longer now, stretched by fog and shadow. And though I could see nothing else, I knew I was not alone. The shapes were patient, waiting, alive in the mist. I exhaled once more, letting the chill fade slightly. The shadows continued, untouchable, silent, flitting just out of reach, beneath the pale hum of the river. The bridge stretched ahead, empty, yet alive with movement, and I walked on careful, hesitant, watched. The fog pressed heavy over the bridge, curling around my boots and ankles. The air smelled damp, of wet wood and moss, cold and still. Each step felt tentative, swallowed quickly by the gray, as if the night itself were listening. I stopped. Faint glimmers caught my eye along the planks, carvings etched deep into the wood, glowing softly in the pale mist. I leaned closer, fingertips brushing the rough, damp surface. Names, unfamiliar, curling letters I had never seen before. The glow pulsed faintly, as if alive, breathing in the fog around me. A shiver ran down my spine. The bridge groaned beneath my weight, long and slow, echoing in the mist. I traced the letters with my eyes, hesitant, aware of some presence just beyond sight. The river hummed beneath, steady, low, carrying a chill upward. I could feel the fog pressing against my face, damp and insistent. Each name seemed to whisper something I could not understand, soft syllables curling into my mind. I stepped forward carefully. The carving stretched ahead, glowing faintly, pulsing with a rhythm I could not place. The air smelled faintly of iron, wet stone, and something older, long forgotten. I pressed my hands along the railing, rough and slick beneath my fingers, grounding me in the cold, damp night. The glow flickered, almost shy, as if aware of my gaze, almost conscious. A name shimmered brighter, then dimmed. The fog thickened around it, curling like smoke, wrapping the bridge in silence and unease. I shivered again, aware of something watching beyond the mist, patient, unmoving. I exhaled slowly. The carvings continued down the bridge, endless, glowing faintly, holding names I could not speak, could not remember. And I knew, walking forward, that they had always been there, waiting, patient, carved into the night. The bridge stretched behind me, pale light fading into fog. The river hummed beneath, steady, endless. I walked on, careful, hesitant, carrying the weight of forgotten names with every step. The fog pressed close over the bridge, curling like smoke along the railings. Cold, damp air brushed my face, heavy with the scent of river mud and wet wood. Each step on the planks felt tentative, swallowed quickly by the mist. I paused, listening. The river hummed beneath, low and steady, carrying a chill that pressed against my chest. Then I saw it, a pale shape moving beneath the water, indistinct, as if the current itself had formed it. I leaned over the railing, fingertips grazing the slick wood. Ripples shivered across the surface, tracing a form that lingered just long enough to be noticed. The fog wrapped around my shoulders, wet and heavy, curling into my hair and clothes. It rose slightly, motion slow and deliberate, but when I blinked, it had vanished. My pulse quickened. The air felt thicker, almost pressing against my skin, searching. The river hummed beneath, endless, patient, carrying an echo of something unseen. I stepped closer. The planks beneath my boots groaned softly, damp and slick. A faint ripple traced along the current, pale and fleeting, shaping itself for a heartbeat, then gone. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my breath. The fog clung tighter, curling into my face, brushing wet fingers along my cheeks. The river shimmered in pale light, but the shape remained just beneath, patient, watching. A shiver ran down my spine. The chill pressed into my bones, slow and deliberate. Every instinct told me to look away. But my gaze lingered, drawn by the impossible presence beneath the water. The current rippled again, briefly lifting the pale form, and it was gone once more. The fog wrapped over the bridge, curling into the railings, around my boots, soft and insistent. I could feel the river's hum in my chest, steady, infinite, carrying something I could not name. I stepped back from the railing. The fog swallowed the shape entirely, leaving only the gentle ripple of water. Yet I knew it lingered, patient and silent, beneath the surface, watching as I walked onward into the mist. The fog lay heavy over the bridge, curling low and thick around my boots. The air smelled damp and earthy, with hints of wet moss and river stone. Each step pressed softly into the planks, muffled, swallowed by the gray that clung to everything. I paused. A movement in the fog caught my eye. Slow, deliberate, against the pull of the wind. It drifted closer, brushing along my face, wet and cold, carrying a whisper I could almost hear. I shivered, shoulders tightening. The mist felt alive, curling around my neck, brushing damp hair against my cheeks. The river hummed beneath, low and steady, pressing against the fog, carrying along the bridge. I took a cautious step forward. The fog twisted against the wind, flitting at impossible angles, brushing my arms and fingers like soft, damp hands. Every inhale carried a chill of mist, the faint scent of something older, forgotten, waiting. A rustle passed across the planks behind me, delicate, almost shy. I spun slowly, boots pressing against wet wood, but the bridge remained empty. Only fog, curling, patient, brushing and teasing the edges of my vision. The wind tried to push aside, but it resisted, moving with intent, whispering along the planks. I felt it press lightly against my cheeks, against my shoulders, fleeting yet deliberate. My breath came shallow, visible in pale swirls, merging with a fog that seemed to have a pulse of its own. I stepped carefully, hands trailing along the slick railing. The fog twisted around my fingers, curling between them, damp and cold. It whispered again, softer this time, almost like a sigh, brushing my ears, urging me forward. The river hummed beneath, carrying the scent of wet iron and distant moss. The fog rustled along the bridge, patient, deliberate, alive in ways I could not name. I walked on careful, hesitant, feeling the whispering mist press against me, unseen but insistent. And though I could see nothing clearly, I knew it followed, brushing, whispering, curling into every step I took across the bridge. The fog moved against the wind, alive, patient, and I was alone with it, breathing it in, carrying its cold touch forward into the mist. The night hung heavy over the bridge, fog curling thick and damp around my boots. The river below hummed low, carrying a chill that pressed upward into the mist. Each breath tasted of wet wood and iron, sharp and metallic on my tongue. A flicker of light caught my eye. The lantern, pale and wavering, drifted upstream, circling slowly against the current. Its glow cast long, trembling reflections across the fog, stretching shadows over the bridge's worn planks. I froze, Something moved just beyond the lantern's light, a shape blurred by mist, hiding patient. The air felt thicker here, as if the fog itself leaned closer, whispering against my ears. The lantern floated closer, swinging gently, casting pale light on what had been hidden. Shapes shifted in the fog, long shadows curling around unseen forms. My fingertips brushed the damp railing, slick and cold, grounded me as I tried to steady my racing heart. I leaned slightly, squinting into the glow. A figure, or perhaps a trick of the light, waited there, pale and indistinct, shrouded in fog. The lantern's circle revealed nothing more, yet the air carried a quiet insistence, a presence just beyond comprehension. The fog rustled, brushing my hair and neck. I could hear it moving, patient, deliberate, curling along the bridge like it had been waiting for me. The river hummed beneath, low and endless, reflecting the lantern's light in soft, trembling ripples. I stepped cautiously, boots pressing into wet planks. The lantern circled again upstream, and a hidden form shifted ever so slightly, revealing a flash of pale movement. The fog closed around it immediately, swallowing all but the faint shimmer of the lantern's glow. A shiver ran through me. The river carried the hum, steady, unending, and the fog pressed closer, wrapping its damp fingers around my shoulders. The shape waited, patient, unseen but watching, revealed only by the lantern's brief, trembling light. I exhaled slowly, taste of cold iron lingering. The lantern drifted again, upstream, leaving shadows to curl in its wake. And I walked onward, carrying the weight of the unseen, the faint glow of the returning lantern brushing the edges of my fear. The fog lay thick over the riverbank, curling along the water's edge like restless fingers. The air was damp, carrying the scent of wet earth and cold stone. Each breath felt sharp, tasting faintly of iron and mist. I stepped quietly along the bridge, the planks slicked beneath my boots. A movement caught my eye, pale, distant, just beyond the lantern's glow. A figure, standing still, watching, silent. My pulse quickened, soft and uneven in the hush. The water rippled faintly beneath it, reflecting a pale, indistinct outline. It shifted slightly as I tried to focus, a shadow against shadow, blending with the fog. I leaned forward, squinting through the mist. Its eyes, or what I thought were eyes, glimmered faintly, cold and still. The figure did not move, yet the air around it seemed heavier, pressing in, damp and whispering. I took a cautious step toward it. The figure vanished immediately, swallowed by fog, leaving only wet earth and the hum of the river. A shiver ran along my spine, damp fog brushing my hair and cheeks. I paused, heart thudding, listening. The wind stirred the mist, carrying the faintest whisper of movement, rustling along the reeds, curling around the bridge. The figure remained hidden, patient, just beyond perception. I stepped again, slow, careful, every plank groaned beneath my weight, the sound swallowed quickly by the fog. A pale light glimmered on the water where it had been, nothing more, yet I felt its gaze lingering, pressing silently. The river hummed low, steady, carrying the smell of cold water and moss. The fog shifted, brushing my shoulders like hesitant fingers, curling along my neck and wrists. The figure remained unseen, a presence that trembled just at the edges of vision. I exhaled slowly, the chill biting my lungs. Each step felt heavier, the weight of being watched pressing in, quiet, insistent. And though the figure had vanished, I knew it was there, waiting beyond the fog, watching silently, a pale gaze that would not leave. The fog pressed close, damp and cold, curling around the bridge like restless fingers. Each breath drew in the smell of wet wood and river rot. The planks beneath my feet creaked softly, uneven, alive in their quiet way. I stepped forward, slow. The bridge seemed longer than before, stretching out beneath me in pale, warped lines. A shiver ran along my spine, the damp air brushing against my neck like a hesitant hand. The lantern ahead flickered weakly, casting shadows that leaned and twisted along the fog. I paused, noticing the planks subtly bending, not with the wind, but with some quiet will of their own. Each step I took felt heavier, drawn out, as if the bridge was breathing beneath me. The river hummed low, restless, carrying the faint smell of wet stone and moss. I tried to focus on a handrail, the the ropes frayed and stiff, but they seemed to ripple, soft and slow, stretching into the mist. My heart thudded quietly, the sound lost beneath the hush of fog and water. I glanced back. The path behind me was unbroken, yet somehow wrong. The planks appeared to undulate, shifting subtly, impossibly, like waves frozen in place. I walked on, careful, each footfall echoing briefly before vanishing into the thick air. The fog clung tighter now, brushing my face, curling around my sleeves, damp and whispering. The bridge beneath me felt endless, folding inward and outward in impossible ways. A shadow passed just beyond the lantern's glow, long, pale, bending along with the warped wood. I stopped, breath shallow, feeling the subtle tremor of something unseen beneath my feet. It was silent, patient, watching, letting me feel the dread fully, lingering in the stretch of fog and wood. The air grew colder, sharp with damp and decay. I leaned slightly over the handrail, the water below rippling in strange, irregular patterns. Even the river seemed to hesitate, bending to the bridge's quiet will, echoing its impossible length. I moved again, cautiously, each step stretching, the planks never ending. The lantern ahead flickered once, twice, revealing nothing but mist and warped wood. Yet the bridge felt alive, bending and folding, as though the river itself was reshaping the world around me. I paused in the middle, feeling the damp press close, the fog brushing hair and skin, the faint groan of the planks beneath. The endless stretch of the bridge yawned in front of me, infinite and quiet, and I realized in the hush of fog and warped wood that the bridge had its own will, patient, waiting, and I was already part of its slow, silent design. The night was thick with fog, the river barely visible beyond the pale glow of the lantern. Its surface trembled faintly, as if breathing under the quiet sky. A low hum rose from the water, soft, almost melodic, vibrating through the soles of my feet. I leaned close to the handrail, cold damp brushing my palms. The vibration traveled upward, a subtle pulse in my bones, steady and unyielding. I could feel it in my chest, a quiet rhythm, like the river itself was alive and listening. The mist swirled around me, curling across my face, wet and whispering. Each step along the bridge seemed heavier, drawn out, as if the hum anchored me to the planks. The air smelled of wet earth, riverweed, and something faintly metallic, lingering beneath the fog. I tried to see the source, but the water shimmered in fractured reflections, never still. Ripples formed soft, deliberate patterns, folding light into strange, pale shapes. They vanished when I blinked, leaving only the hum persistent, vibrating against my ribs. A shiver traced my spine, the fog brushing hair and neck, whispering against my skin. The lantern flickered, shadows leaning into the vibration, stretching and bending with the river's song. I caught a movement beneath the water, pale and indistinct, rising and sinking with each low note. The hum grew slightly louder, resonating through the air, wrapping around the bridge, the ropes, the mist. I felt the planks pulse beneath my feet, almost like they were echoing the river's quiet melody. I froze, listening, letting the vibration sink into me, into my bones, into my breath. Soft footsteps echoed behind me. Or perhaps it was only the hum, shifting, carrying itself across the fog bridge. I dared not turn, afraid the figure, if figure there was, would vanish or multiply in shadows. The river song rose again, subtle, chilling, wrapping around my wrists, curling along my sleeves. I could feel the currents pulse beneath the water, tugging faintly at the air, at the fog, at the stillness of night. My reflection in the dark water trembled with a melody, a pale, wavering ghost. I stepped forward slowly, careful, letting the hum guide my feet. The mist wrapped closer, carrying the vibration against my cheeks, wet and whispering. The bridge seemed to stretch slightly with each step, elongating in rhythm with the low song. A shadow crossed the lantern's glow, long and silent, moving with the pulse of the water. I held my breath, feeling the hum thrum through my chest, a cold echo against my heartbeat. It vanished before I could focus, leaving only the river, endless and humming, and the fog pressed close. I leaned slightly over the handrail, letting the vibration wash over me, the chill and the sound entwined. The current whispered faint names, stories I couldn't place, lost beneath the gentle hum. And for a long moment, I was suspended, alone, trembling, and part of the river's quiet, unending song. The fog had thickened by midnight, curling along the river, damp against my face. Each step on the bridge felt heavier, as if the mist pressed against my bones. A faint whisper drifted through the haze, soft and deliberate, tugging at the edge of my mind. "Leave," it said. Or perhaps it was more than one voice, overlapping, layered in the hum of night. I froze, feeling the dampness cling to my hair, my collar, my skin, but curiosity anchored me. The lantern flickered in the distance, casting pale light over the rippling water. Shadows leaned into the fog, twisting and stretching along the planks beneath my feet. The whispers came again, nearer now, brushing my ears, cold and intimate. "Go! Before it finds you." I pressed my hands against a railing that would slick with moisture, gripping for warmth. The mist wrapped closer, brushing cheeks and shoulders, brushing like cautious fingers. A soft rustle followed, like movement just beyond the lantern's glow. I dared not turn, afraid that looking would dissolve the shapes the fog held. Every breath caught in my chest, heavy with the scent of wet earth and river weed. The whispering intensified, circling, overlapping, weaving between the hum of the river. "Do not linger. It watches." I felt it, a presence brushing against the air, brushing the fine hairs of my arms, unseen and patient. The bridge planks creaked beneath hesitant steps. Not mine. A chill ran down my spine, carried on the fog, carrying the whispers closer. I held my ground, listening, feeling each syllable vibrate faintly in the damp night air. A shadow flickered in the corner of my eye, pale and shifting, aligning with the rhythm of the whispers. I blinked, and it was gone, leaving only the mist curling, dense and alive around the lantern light. The whispers softened, coaxing, insistent yet gentle, brushing against my curiosity and fear. "Turn back, or stay at your own peril." I shivered, the fog brushing my neck and shoulders, the river humming beneath, steady and unyielding. The air was thick, smelling of wet wood and cold water, tinged with something older, something forgotten. Each step forward drew the whispers closer, intimate, teasing, almost like a breath on my cheek. I could feel them pressing against my ribs, my ears, curling in the hollow of my throat. The fog twisted, bending around the bridge as if it had its own intent, alive in the quiet night. The lantern's glow reflected on the water, fractured, dancing in rhythm with the whispers. I leaned slightly, trying to peer into the mist, try to catch the unseen face that haunted the words. But the fog moved, always shifting, always just beyond clear view, leaving only a shiver of dread. The whispers slowed, lingering near the edges of my mind, soft as breath, delicate as frost. I stood frozen, listening, every nerve alert to the low, persistent hum of the river and the intimate voices. Curiosity tangled with fear, binding me in the fog, in the cold, in the whispers that would not leave. The night pressed in from all sides, the bridge stretching long and endless beneath the lantern's pale light. The whispers lingered, fading and returning, weaving a tension I could not shake, a warning I could not obey. And for a long, suspended moment, I remained there, alone, listening, caught between the fog and the voices that whispered still. The night had thickened into velvet, the fog pooling along the river like pale smoke. The bridge beneath me groaned softly, wet and slick, breathing with the wind. I paused, listening to the low hum of the current, a pulse that seemed to match my heartbeat. The lantern's glow trembled on the water, fractured and fragile. I leaned slightly over the railing, curious, and the surface rippled, delicate as silk. For a moment, it seemed empty, then slowly, another figure appeared. It mimicked me perfectly. Every tilt in my head, every breath I drew, every hesitant step along the planks, it followed. I froze, the chill pressing through my jacket, settling into my bones. The fog brushed my cheeks again, soft and whispering, carrying the faint smell of damp earth. The reflection moved in perfect sync, pale and featureless, its edges wavering in the lantern light. I blinked, thinking it might vanish, but it only became sharper, more insistent. My hand hovered above the railing, trembling slightly, the wetwood cold beneath my fingertips. I took a cautious step backward. The figure mirrored me without pause. A rustle of wind stirred the fog, carrying the faint scent of riverweed, thick and alive. Alone, the whispers breathed. I shivered, though the bridge stretched empty in every direction. The water reflected both of us, and yet only one shadow belonged to the living. I leaned closer, tried to make sense of it, the fog brushing my hair, damp and cold. The reflection tilted its head as I did, tilting slightly more, tilting unnaturally. It grinned then, or I imagined it, in the distorted pale light, and the water stilled, silent but heavy. Each step I took made the bridge groan beneath my weight. The mirrored figure moved without hesitation, a perfect echo of my hesitation. I felt the mist curl around my neck, a soft pressure, brushing like invisible fingers. I raised my hand slowly. It lifted in tandem. My pulse thrummed in my ears, a low echo, mingling with the hum of the river. For a heartbeat, I thought the fog might hide the reflection. But it did not. The air smelled colder, wet wood and river mud, tangy with something metallic I could not name. A shadow flitted across the surface, not quite my own, lingering just beneath the lantern's glow. Every move I made, it followed. Every pause, it waited, patient, unmoving. I stepped back toward the center of the bridge, cautious, breathing shallowly. The figure followed, perfectly, a silent echo beneath the tremor of the lantern's light. My skin prickled, hair standing, as if the fog itself were alive, watching, breathing. I tried to look away, to focus on the water itself, the hum, the fog curling around the planks. But the reflection, no, the other, shifted, tilting, stretching slightly, unnaturally. It did not speak. It did not move faster than I did. Yet I could feel its intent pressing, patient and cold. The bridge seemed longer, endless beneath my feet, fog curling in restless fingers. I swallowed, the mist brushing lips and eyes, carrying the taste of damp earth and old river wood. The second figure remained, unwavering, a pale echo following my every motion. I stepped back toward the lantern, toward the warm pale light, but the reflection stayed. Every breath I took, every blink, it mirrored a perfect, quiet, dreadful twin. The fog swirled, dense and whispering, folding around the bridge, around the river, around the two of us. For a long, suspended moment, I simply stood there, watching, breathing, feeling the reflection, feeling the river hum beneath, and sensing the cold weight of the unseen. The night pressed in, thick and patient, and the second figure waited, following, always following, just beneath the surface. The air had grown colder, heavy with damp fog curling like smoke over the river. I stepped onto the bridge. Wooden planks slipped beneath my feet. Each creak swallowed immediately by the thickening mist. The world had shrunk to nothing but gray, and the lantern's glow barely touched the edges of fog. I drew a shallow breath. It came back sharp and damp, tasting of wet wood and something older, unseen. The hum of the river had faded, swallowed entirely, leaving only the pulse of my own heartbeat. The fog moved around me, brushing my arms, sliding over my shoulders like soft, invisible fingers. Each step I took seemed to stretch, the planks beneath twisting subtly, uncertain. I stopped, listened. Nothing, only my breath. The bridge disappeared beneath the fog. The railing vanished, the water vanished. Even the lantern became a pale, wavering blur. I felt unmoored, weightless, alone in a world without edges. A rustle of movement whispered near my feet, too soft to be the wind. I froze, the fog pressing close, wet and smelling faintly of riverweed. I dared not move. The mist swallowed every sound, every detail, and yet I knew something was there. My hands brushed the railing, cold, solid, and yet it shivered beneath my touch, as if alive. The fog shifted, curling upward, and the faint glow of the lantern stretched, elongated, distorted. I could no longer tell if the bridge ended or went on forever, if the river flowed or simply waited. I breathed again, and my exhale vanished instantly, drawn into the gray nothing. A shiver ran down my spine. I could feel the fog brushing my hair, slipping inside my collar. It whispered something, soft, unintelligible, but I caught the faintest syllable. My name. I took a cautious step forward. The bridge held. For now, the fog clung to my legs, to my skin, brushing, tugging, teasing the edges of fear. Every sound, every shadow was erased. There was only gray, dense and endless. A memory surfaced, ghost-like. A cold hand, a reflection, the faint echo of whispers. I blinked, and the fog thickened, swallowing even that fragile recollection. I was alone, and yet not alone. The lantern trembled in my hand, casting a halo that meant nothing in this depthless mist. Shapes seemed to emerge just beyond vision. Shadows that shifted, curling, vanishing the moment I tried to focus. I stepped back, my breath shallow, the bridge beneath uncertain, stretching. Silence pressed against my ears, heavy, unbroken. Even the river remained mute, its currents hidden, leaving only a low vibration in my chest. The fog whispered again, closer now, brushing my cheek with invisible breath. I shivered, turning slowly. Nothing, only fog, dense and suffocating. The bridge seemed endless, the night without bounds. My footsteps lost before they could settle. I wanted to move, to run, yet my legs were tethered to the plank beneath, hesitant and unsteady. A shadow passed, or maybe the fog shifted. I could not tell. The mist pressed close, damp and cold, brushing my face, curling around my shoulders like waiting arms. It whispered again, urgent now, insistent, but still I could not understand the words. The bridge, the river, the night, all swallowed in gray. My lantern flickered once, twice, and became a pale heartbeat in the fog. Every sound, every light, every edge dissolved into nothing. I was alone, and yet the fog pressing closer, patient and cold, and I could feel, just beyond vision, something following, waiting, moving silently with me. The night pressed close, thick and damp against my skin. The bridge stretched before me, each plank slick, shining faintly under the pale lantern light. The air smelled of wet wood and river, heavy, lingering, almost alive. I moved carefully, soft footsteps barely stirring the fog. The hum of the water beneath had returned, low and steady, vibrating in my chest. The fog curled around my ankles, brushing, whispering, pulling at my clothes. One step, then another. The bridge seemed endless tonight, as if it had grown longer while I watched. A sudden brush against my leg. Cold, feather-light, almost hesitant. I froze, breath caught in my throat. Nothing moved in the lantern's pale circle. The fog shimmered, and I thought I saw shapes curling, fleeting, vanishing before I could focus. The air carried a faint rustling, like whispers brushing over skin, soft and urgent. I tried to convince myself it was only the wind, only the mist, but the feeling persisted. Something unseen had touched me, or followed me, brushing against the curve of my calves. Each step forward became a test of courage. The planks beneath shivered faintly under my weight, as if alive, aware. The fog seemed to reach, pressing, curling, urging me to stop. I dared to glance down. Nothing. Only gray, liquid gray. The water swallowed the bridge's supports. The river's hum vibrating too close to ignore. The air grew colder, heavier. It clung to my skin, slipping into my collar, brushing my neck. A faint whisper curled just at the edge of hearing, brushing the thoughts from my mind. Step after careful step. My legs felt weighted, as if something clung to them beneath the fog. A shiver ran up my spine. I wanted to run, but the bridge offered no end, no reassurance. I stopped. The lantern trembled in my hand. Its light flickered, then steadied. The fog thickened, curling in from the river like patient fingers. Another brush, stronger this time. It moved across my calves, sharp and cold, slipping beneath the lantern's glow. I tried to lift my foot, but the plank seemed to grip, stubborn beneath my soul. I swallowed hard, breath shallow, fog curling in my mouth. A rustling rose from below, low, patient, almost amused. I could feel the vibration, the gentle tug of unseen hands brushing, circling, waiting. The bridge bent subtly beneath me, warped and endless. The lantern's light barely pierced the mist. Shadows flickered and vanished at the edge of my vision. I could not see the source of the touch, only its presence pressing, brushing, watching. I moved, step after careful step, fog curling tighter with every inch. It whispered again, low and soft, tugging the edge of my mind. I shivered, heart tight, legs trembling beneath the invisible weight. And then I felt it, a final brush, deliberate and lingering, cold fingers against my calf, holding, urging me forward. The fog seemed to inhale around me, silent, patient, waiting for the last step. I stepped, and the bridge trembled. The fog swallowed everything. I could feel the air shifting, hands brushing, lingering, teasing. I stood alone, yet the sensation persisted, pressing against my legs, curling over my shoulders. The river hummed below, a low, vibrating murmur threading through the fog. Every nerve screamed to turn back, every muscle tensed, ready to flee. But the bridge stretched onward, and I had taken the last step. Silence pressed in, heavy, suffocating, yet patient. The fog swirled around me, brushing, whispering, leaving its cold imprint on my skin. The bridge existed only as gray beneath my feet, endless, haunted, alive. I dared not look behind. I could not move forward. And yet, the sensation remained, unseen hands brushing, waiting. The fog thinned slowly, retreating into the river like a tide. The first light touched the bridge, pale and hesitant, would gleamed wet beneath my feet, soft under my soles. Still trembling from the night's weight, silence stretched around me, vast and empty. No whispers, no brushes of unseen hands. Just the hum of the river, low and distant, vibrating gently in my chest. The lantern lay still, dim now in the morning light. Its glow seemed tired, as if it had watched too much. I bent to lift it, fingers brushing its cool metal, and it felt heavier than before. The planks beneath me were solid, unwarped, ordinary, yet memory lingered, curling along the edges of vision. I could almost feel the hands, soft and patient, brushing my calves, urging me forward. A pale mist hovered low, hugging the riverbank, curling among the reeds. The shapes I had feared last night had vanished, leaving only whispers in the memory. I breathed in, cold and damp, tasting the river on my tongue, feeling it brush over my skin. The bridge stretched empty, endless, yet somehow safe in the morning. I moved slowly, each step deliberate, listening to the hollow thump of my own heartbeat. The river hummed still, low and melodic, threading through the quiet air. I paused midway, letting the light touch my face. Shadows from the night had disappeared, leaving only the soft sway of reeds and pale reflections on the water. The world felt fragile, held together by a thin veil of mist and memory. I glanced behind me. Nothing, only the empty planks, stretching into fog's retreating edge. A shiver ran down my spine, a lingering echo for what had brushed my legs. I could feel it in my bones, memory not presence. The hands, the whispers, the shapes, they existed only in the skin and the mind. Yet I could not shake the sense that the bridge remembered, and it had left its mark on me. The air carried a faint, sweet scent of wet earth and moss. I breathed deeply, letting it fill my lungs, grounding myself in the morning. The river reflected pale light, soft ripples hinting at the motion beneath, calm yet alive. I stepped carefully, counting each plank, listening to the quiet thrum of the river. The hum vibrated faintly, threading through the soles of my feet, leaving a hollow echo in my chest. I felt alone, not abandoned, simply aware. The light grew warmer, brushing the fog into retreat. Shapes of reeds and distant trees emerged, gentle, ordinary, familiar. I exhaled long and slow, letting the tension slip from shoulders stiff with fear. I reached the far end of the bridge. Nothing waited, nothing watched, only the pale light, the soft hum of the river, and the memory of the night lingering in the skin. I paused, hand resting on the worn wood, cool and solid under my palm. The bridge had returned to itself, and I had returned, too, changed but intact, carrying the memory like a quiet scar. The morning carried on, indifferent and soft. Bird songs stirred along the distant trees, delicate against the low hum of water. The fog disappeared completely, leaving only clarity, pale and serene. I lingered for a moment, letting the river's calm seep in, brushing over the shadows in my mind. I felt the isolation, yet it was gentle, like a hand on my shoulder that did not frighten. The spirits of the bridge had faded with the mist, leaving only memory and a quiet acceptance in the chest. I stepped off the last plank. The river hummed softly beneath me, carrying the night away. The world felt fragile, but solid. I breathed in the dawn, letting the chill fill me, letting the light trace every scar, every whisper, every brush of unseen hands. And I walked on alone, carrying the quiet weight of memory across the calm river.